welcome to the Brain Injury Group podcast, where we share stories, insights, guidance and advice to families who have been impacted by brain injury and the professionals that are supporting them. My name's Claire, and today I'm joined by Helen from Billy's Charity. Before we get started, I'd also like to thank our sponsors, who without them we wouldn't be able to produce the podcast. So thank you to Abilities Enabled. Hello, Helen. Thanks
Hi.
for joining us.
Welcome.
So you've got Billy's, which is a charity.
It's a CIC. Yeah.
So I think if we could start, if you'd just like to tell us a little bit about your reasons for setting up Billy's and how you wanted to sort of get that out there and what you want to achieve with it.
So I went through a clinical negligence claim for my son, Billy. We had admissions in 2015 and I recognised I didn't know anybody else who'd gone through that process. So I started looking for the families. As an SEN parent, as a carer parent, you know that all the families are always your best friends. You don't really get the information from the professionals, or the families are always best. So I started actively looking for them and built up sort of quite large private online support groups for families. And then 2-3 years ago now, we decided to register as a CIC because we kind of want to get the word out there that it's not what the Daily Mail tells you at all, going through medical negligence. And it's about families. It's about supporting the families. And their voice is often not heard in this process. So as a charity, I often advocate for families and I support them and help them to work better with the deputy, the case manager, the litigation solicitor, or ultimately change, if that's what needs to be done, instruct new. So it's well needed, very much needed and well supported.
Yeah. I think it's a lengthy and challenging process to embark on, which for us professionals is we're doing that one bit of your life and at the same time you as families and parents are still living your lives, aren't you? And alongside this is one part of your life, the litigation process and afterwards and you're still doing the day to day.
Yeah. And it's massive. I would never underestimate how much of an impact going through litigation. Everybody knows it's one of the life's major stresses. But if you're a parent of a child with complex needs, you've got the stresses of being a parent carer 24/7 and litigation as well. And we choose to do litigation. It's not that anybody's forcing us to, but we choose because we recognise that money gives choices for the child. Money gives security, and that's what we all want to do ultimately for our children.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you support families and individuals who are embarking on this journey, and at what stage do you get involved?
Quite often, it always makes me smile because quite often I'm on Facebook all the time. And I will see somebody posting a cerebral palsy group or something about, we're thinking about going for a claim, didn't know what to do. So I will always recommend either contact here, Brain Injury Group. I'm not professional, but instructing a solicitor, I will help them. I'll support them to, how to find a solicitor, avma.org. Excellent website. Your website is very good. Or sometimes I get a phone call. People have been given my number and more. Because it's such a hidden world. It really is. It's hard to explain how hidden we are. And we're told throughout litigation, don't speak to anybody, don't tell anybody, you can't damage your case. Which we understand, but as families, they need support. So often, it can be at any time throughout the case. It could be post-settlement. Somebody who joined our group recently is post-settlement. They settled about 5 years ago and are still without accommodation. They're still struggling. So, yeah.
Because I think those challenges and decisions and impact on the family, it isn't over at point of settlement, is it? And there's a whole new set of challenges that arrive, and often those professionals are still involved, or other professionals are involved in your life.
Yeah, massively. Although the legal team obviously pulls back once you've settled, but post-settlement, court protection deputies, case managers, massive impact on families and siblings. And we're very much about informing and empowering families. So I will support them to not challenge in a bad way, but to ask questions and to understand what can happen and what should be happening. And it's really valuable to speak to other families in the same position as a case manager who may say something and the family says, well, I didn't know I had to do that, and other families will go, no you don't, but you can do this, and it's what talk to them about this, etc. So it just informs and empowers family much better.
I think when you're not involved in dealing with these lawyers or case managers or medical professionals in a professional capacity, we are still very British about this. Like, you don't ask questions, you do as you're told, you wait for somebody to come back to you with a bit of information. And this is a professional person, this is a lawyer, for goodness sake. I can't question what they're saying. And I think we are very nervous as individuals of asking those questions, even if we don't think that something is right for us. And I know that a big thing that you are quite passionate about is that if the professional that you've been put in contact with, whether that be the deputy or the case manager or any carers or therapists or any other part of that world that is going to be part of your world, doesn't feel right for you and your family, you can challenge that, you
Absolutely.
can question it.
Yeah. And the thing is that good professionals recognise that. Good case managers know that not everybody gets on with everybody else, and it could just be as simple as a personality clash. And really good case managers absolutely understand that and will bow out gracefully. The ones to be concerned about are the ones who cling on for dear life. And that works for whether it's a legal team or, a deputy. The good ones recognise it's so important. This is our families, this is our life. And these people have a lot of control over not just the child or P, but over the family. And it's such a massive impact and massive control over the family when you're already in a stressful position with a child with complex needs. So, yeah, we do encourage to talk and to challenge and to hopefully make it work. I've been on many online conversations with a deputy or a case manager where I'm advocating for the family, because sometimes the family might not be able to articulate that. And I always say that, I do lots of presentations to legal teams, as you know, court protection. And I always say that person sat in front of you, maybe nodding their head and smiling, but we're all a bit twitchy. We're all sort of traumatised from what we've been through, and it doesn't stop with the birth of the child. It goes on, and then we've got a legal case, and we don't have any sleep. So parents are very twitchy. Just be kind and understand.
I think often with a medical negligence case, there is a trust element there, isn't there? Because you, as parents, have been let down at a really vulnerable time where you are supposed to be being supported and cared for and looked after by trained professionals who are, seeing you through this process of what should be a really joyous moment in your life. And often there's been some challenges, but somebody might have felt, oh, it was a bit of a challenging birth, but everything's okay now, because sometimes it's not immediately obvious that there might be some challenges there. But I think there can be a trust issue in negligence claims, can't there? Because you've had a professional involved in your care, and ultimately that has led to where you are as a family now.
Massively. And I think it's quite common. It's very rare for a parent to know at birth that has been negligence. It's quite common, from my understanding, speaking to families. Very similar to myself. My son was 5 before I started a case, because you kind of have a niggling feeling that something wasn't right. So it's common that you don't start initially. And I say this, solicitors will say, well, how can we get families to trust us? Well, they're not going to trust you. Just accept that as a fact, because we were let down. That's so true what you're saying at the most important point of our life. And then it was denied, and we've been through all sorts of gaslighting since, about blame on the parents, blame on the mother, blame on this and the other. And then you go through a case and you find, actually, no, somebody made a mistake. And that's what's happened. That's why our child is the way that they are, and that's the impact on our lives. So it's about mutual trust. When case managers go into families, and I always think, parents have fought for the children for a fair few years. Local authority, schools, we are kind of warriors, hospitals. We're used to, trying to get any kind of help we can. So when a case manager comes into our life, we have expectations of that case manager that they're going to support us. And too often the case manager will think that their role is to dictate. And that's not right. Good case managers are like gold dust. But they're brilliant for the families, and the families really value a good case manager. Can make a massive difference to a family's life, putting in therapy, supporting the whole family. It's a massive issue. It works really well. It's unfortunate when it doesn't. So we do support families to either remove that case manager or, work with them and help them.
Yeah. So it's a parent who's been through the litigation journey and had some challenges post-settlement, I think, in your story as well.
Yeah.
What is the one thing that you wish you'd known right at the start of that journey that perhaps you and I know there are lots of things, but if there was one thing you could tell yourself right at the very beginning, what do you think that would be?
So I know deputies won't like me saying this, but be joint deputy. Because I didn't, and most families are the same. Why wouldn't I know? I started my law degree because it fascinated me, the whole process, and I thought this can't be right. But the law isn't necessarily fair. It is what it is. As a parent, you have, and I think so people understand, if you have a cause protection deputy involved, good deputies work well with the family. There's no question. And there's many very, very good deputies out there. But by not being joint, and I made that mistake, I thought I'd made the right decision, and I wasn't joint deputy. I had no idea what was happening to my son's funds for many years. And now that I am joint deputy, whole different relationship. It's great. Lots of trust in the deputy. We don't always agree. In fact, we've been known to argue, which is fine, but I respect her very, very much, and we both have equal say. And we'll debate over things, and that's fine because not everybody always agrees with everything. So joint deputy, absolutely be joint deputy. Don't settle. And I know deputies don't like that, and they'll mutter about, well, it's insurance. There's no reason not to be joint. There isn't, and there's lots of reasons from the family's point of view why they should be joint deputy.
Good. And how does Billy work with professionals that are involved? What do you do as an organisation to work alongside the professionals, whether that be lawyers, case managers, deputies, therapists? How do you work alongside those?
So I spend a lot of my time personally doing presentations and meeting up with, case management companies, cause protection deputies, legals, because we need these people in our life. From families can get very, I hate my case manager. And it's just kind of, well, we need them because there's a reason for a good case manager. We need them to prove costs. It's beneficial to your child. A good case manager will put in a good regime of therapy and be great support. But it's kind of helping those professionals how to work with families. I always think if a family's got to our stage, they've got some gumph about them, that they've gone through a litigation case, that they've got a child they've had to already fight for. They may not have, your barrister's accent. There's one lady in particular I always think of when I say this, and she's from Derby, and I know she'll probably hate me saying I can hardly understand her at times, but the brightest and really on the ball with everything. And I think your average solicitor or barrister may look at her. She was 17 when she had her child and think, they may have their own views. Don't, we're the ones who started the case. We're the ones who respect us and include us in everything. And I think you get that trilogy in interim sometimes of the legal solicitor, deputy and case manager, and they forget there's a family underneath that. Just listen to the family and include the family in everything. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you go and do training sessions for lawyers, and what does that entail? Is that very much about the inclusion of the family and how that can be done?
It's about understanding what works best for the family. So if you're a solicitor, you understand the process, absolutely. But as a first timer, I didn't. I understand it better now, obviously, but I didn't. So when you have, a client, be clear and transparent with them. So I do lots of presentations and then question and answer sessions, and asking solicitors just put something in writing, because we might, be on a phone call and understand everything. And then we had 4 nights of no sleep because our child's been rushed into intensive care. It's completely gone out of our head. And I know it's a cost issue, because I know some solicitors will go, if I send an email, I have to charge for it. Well, charge for it and send the email, because that just confirms what we say to our families now as well, is when you've had a conversation with a solicitor or a deputy or case manager, email them and say, my understanding of our conversation was, just if there's anything I've misunderstood, if you could let me know. And then it just kind of makes it give more clarity on both sides. Parents are very vulnerable. And the thing is, birth injury doesn't choose its victims. We've got solicitors and consultants in our group, within our charity. We've got very intelligent people, all people from all walks of life. So it's important to remember that person started this legal claim. That person wanted to challenge. It's a massive thing to do. It really is a big thing to do, and it's a hard, grueling process. So that I'm always saying to legals and anybody, listen and work with the families. Don't disregard them. Not the eye roll, which I get so on families. Roll of the eyes. It's not appropriate. Really isn't.
Yeah.
We're humans.
How would you advise or guide professionals to maybe deal with complex issues with families, whereas maybe there's a disagreement or there is perhaps a concern that things aren't working as they should, perhaps in that family unit, because it is a very stressful situation. So there may not be anything sinister there, but there may be something that's not quite happening because parents are not well enough because of the impact on themselves or for many other reasons. How would you advise solicitors and other professionals to engage with families about concerns that they may have or challenges that they perhaps want to bring about a situation?
It's an interesting question because first and foremost it's the family, and it is their family. So although and I say an outsider, to a deputy, to a case manager, how that family works may not look appropriate. But I would challenge anybody, if you walked into any family house at 7 o'clock on a weekday morning, there'd be chaos, because that's how families are. Nothing's perfect. But as families, we are judged to step back. And again, we say this to deputies, talk to the families first. The case manager is instructed and paid by the deputy. In our world, it tends to be property and finance deputy.
Yeah.
The deputy shouldn't really be discussing health and welfare issues with the case manager. So the case managers should be working for the family. And again, I would stress, good case managers do. They understand the dynamics. They talk to the deputy if there's a budget issue or they want to discuss budgets. No issue with that at all. But first and foremost, health and welfare is with the family. If the child is under 18, particularly, it's with the family. And if there are concerns, and there's a process to follow. There's safeguarding. You report to social services. I've supported a number of families who case manager has reported them to social services. To be fair, in both occasions when I supported the family, it's because the case manager was cross that the family had managed to remove them from working with them, and it was vexatious. But in both instances, I said bring the social workers in. One of them was over COVID, so I was able to do it online with them. We FaceTimed. Bring the social workers in. Let the social workers see how you as a family work, because you've nothing to hide. So it's dialogue. It's always dialogue. And I think where the problems I've found is when a deputy and a case manager are talking and not talking to the family. All three of you sit down if you need to. Everybody just openly talk.
Yeah, and I think you just mentioned yourself in your own relationship with the deputy that you are joint deputy with. You don't always agree.
Yeah.
That's not always a bad thing, is it?
No.
We don't agree in our lives generally, and sometimes having that challenge from somebody else makes you sort of either evidence why your viewpoint is the way forward, or acknowledge that perhaps there are some things that you need to maybe think about a bit more deeply before a final decision is made. You don't have to agree, and it's probably good sometimes that you don't always agree, because there are going to be things that you maybe have missed or that need a bit more discussion, or there might be another way, or and I think that all does come back to communication and discussion and dialogue and challenge. And
Good
I think
communication covers everything. It really, really does. We're not monsters, but we are traumatized. So I think, and I always ask professionals to remember that you have to look at the impact on our lives and how we're living. And it's an unequal relationship. You've got a deputy who controls the finances, who controls what the family are paid, who controls the house that the family live in, that controls who pays for the utility bills. It's not a comfortable feeling, and it shouldn't always be this way. Good deputies, again, I would say, understand that. Being joint gives you some control of that and I know deputies don't like it, but it's better for the family if they are joint. Then they've got a right to know I think you have to understand, this is our child. This is our family. So we're going to nobody can really, I'm sure that there are cases of where the family are abusing the position. I have to say, I've been supporting families in over 10 years. Of course, I'm probably not going to hear about those cases. But in fairness, I do, because I'm in lots of different groups. I'm in lots of different, I suspect, and there was one family that I was a bit concerned about in the early days. So I've come across one family, but of all the hundreds and probably thousands of families that I've now spoken to, overall, those families care enough to go through litigation. They're that determined to get the right care for their child. That's a brave step to take.
It's a really challenging thing to do, isn't it?
Massively, yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about lawyers and case managers, both litigation and court protection deputies. What other professionals do you work with now, or what other professionals would you like to engage with and work with to support families?
So we have good dialogue with the OPG currently. I have to say they've been very welcoming, because I spent a few years emailing them politely, quite often, saying, can we just have a talk? And they ignored in terms of, but they always responded to my emails. And then eventually we've had a few meetings with them this year. So I see that as a good step forward. It's not the answer to everything, because they are under pressure. They're underfunded. There's lots of issues, and I have great sympathy for them. Naively, I think everybody wants to do a good job, and in an ideal world, we would do a good job. But some of the decisions that they make, in fact, impact our parents massively. At the beginning of the year, there was the issue about where benefits were to be paid to. So if it's PIP, and we had a deputy telling a parent that because it's PIP money and it's for P, and the mum sort of saying, well, I use it as part of the shopping because he's non-vocal, he's non-verbal, so I kind of do all the shopping. And the deputy was saying, well, buy separate boxes of washing powder. Have one for P and one for the rest of the family. And we're going, no, that's just not really. And the OPG was sort of saying, well, that seems quite reasonable. No, it's not reasonable. 2 up, 2 down terrace, and you've got 3 kids, and mum's buying 2 boxes of what? No, that's not going to happen. Is it? Why? You don't need to, let's work out a way where everyone's happy and everybody understands what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's key. Again, communication, discussion.
Always.
Yeah. Think about the dynamics of the family and how that family work together, because we're not all different. Our families are all very different, aren't they? And you're absolutely right. Somebody came into my house at 7:00 one morning. Some days there might be a bit of shouting, other days it's very quiet and calm, but very rarely. So yeah, I agree. We have to consider that and think about that family dynamic. And I always say to the team here and teams that I've worked with before, we might be the 6th or 7th call that parent has made that day, because they've built themselves up all week. They've not got a lot of time. Today's the day they're going to get through their list and make all the phone calls. That could be to hospitals. It could be to schools. It could be to chase information from local authorities. It could be having difficult conversations with social workers or legal teams or whoever that might be. They might have had a bit of a disagreement with the case manager who's turned up at the house and tried to, ask them something or discuss something that they don't think is right for their child. And then they've got on the phone to us. And if they don't, if we don't acknowledge some of those challenges that they've perhaps got, and maybe don't give them straight away the answer that they were hoping for, and that's no fault of ours and no fault of theirs. Sometimes there isn't the right answer, is there? We have to acknowledge that actually we're at the end of a very stressful day that person's had. So that frustration and that anger might come out at whoever that is along the process, but recognise why that is, recognise that it's not aimed at you.
It's not personal.
It's not personal. That family is it's a tough day for that family, and we need to sort of take a step back and figure out how we can resolve the situation and move forward with an answer that's going to help the family, even if it's not the one that they were looking for when they first got in touch with us. So I think that's really critical. I think another key point that's probably really important for you to get across is, and people listening to this podcast may be asking themselves that, as a professional, what are the benefits to me in engaging with you in your organisation? What do I get out of it?
So my background's in business development. It comes down to money. Would you rather your client stay with you or go off elsewhere? Because if we can't resolve an issue, if you have a professional who's not open, who's not engaging, and there are many deputies who maybe have, and I think not just deputies, but that's just because it's in my mind of one recently, who may have had a misunderstanding with the family initially, but we help the family to sort of question that. And if you can work through that, that's brilliant. The family, ultimately, what the family can do, it's not deputy shopping, they will instruct a new deputy. And that's a massive, massive decision for a family to make. Nobody wants to change deputies, because again, the deputy controls the finances. So as mum, if your house is being paid for by the deputy's managing all the bills, all your utility payments, your own money to buy food for your children, it's a huge decision because your fear is that that's going to stop. And that has happened to families, that they've challenged the deputy and all of a sudden bills aren't paid. There's no money coming through. It's control and it's wrong. And we know that, but good deputies understand, even, I'd say deputies who want to be good, they're open to dialogue because no one's perfect. And that's, I've had families come to me and I can kind of think, oh, to be fair, I kind of agree with the deputy on that one. I think, but the family wouldn't know. They think they've got, a reasonable argument, if you like. And I say, well, to be fair, the deputy's working within, their kind of remit. You need to be talking to them. So we would always encourage the benefits for professionals is to retain your clients. It never ceases to amaze me. Somebody's family's moved from a deputy instructor to a new deputy. I've never once had a deputy ask the family, why did you leave? There's reasons and there's evidence. There's usually good evidence as to why that family has left, because they've not been heard, they've not been listened to. They will instruct a new deputy because that seems to be the only option. If a deputy is ignoring them, they'll instruct a new one. And quite frankly, that's what we'd recommend them to do if all other avenues have failed. So if you want to retain your clients, if you want to build your business, it's all about money. No one's stupid. We know it's about money, and we're happy for people to be paid. No question about that at all. But if you want to retain, it's worth engaging with us because we will help. We had one family that was having a real problem with the deputy, and she wasn't, just very stressed. Mum wasn't very articulate. She was terrified of speaking to the deputy. So I offered to be on an online call with her to support her and to advocate for her. The deputy refused. And I thought that was kind of short-sighted because if you'd have allowed us, I suspect we would have been able to sort that issue out. I really do, because I could see from Mum's point of view, but I could also see from the deputies.
Yeah.
Ultimately, Mum ended up instructing another deputy, which causes her problems more than anybody else.
It's not an easy process, is it?
It's not an easy process. 9-12 months waiting list at the moment at COP. It's not easy. It really, really isn't easy. It's the last desperate attempt is when a family instructs a new deputy, and that should be listened to by legal companies, I think, more than it is now.
Yeah, and I think that feedback for any business, if you lose a client or a customer or whatever industry you're in, you should always get that feedback as to why you've lost that client, because that helps you develop and grow and adjust some of your practices that maybe aren't working.
Yeah,
absolutely. From a professional point of view, what one thing do you think they should take and put into all of their practices, all of their working processes and the engagement that they have with the families that they are employed to do a job for?
Yeah. Listen always. And I do have sympathy. We're all adults, and I can get, you've got a solicitor who's got 200 files or whatever, however many cases they're working on. I get it's a stressful life. Case managers the same. Lots of different clients. I've no issue. Everybody has a bad day. Nobody's perfect. But listen to the families. If they've got an issue, don't dismiss it, because quite often it'll come across. Again, thinking back to a recent situation with a mum with a case when the carers just, weren't turning up, or, they weren't being reliable. So mum didn't want to, she wanted to change how the carers were coming into the house. And and I can get the case manager was busy, but she ignored it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And that's the family's daily living is in turmoil. So just please listen, because ultimately what mum ended up doing was, removing the case manager. And it could have been resolved so easily. So again, good case managers, good deputies, good solicitors, listen and talk to the families. Give them the respect they deserve.
Yeah. I think family dynamics is massively important. You've got 2 children.
Yeah.
And I think one thing we've talked about on one of the other podcasts is the impact on family life, and the impact on your other children is big,
huge.
Isn't it? Because,
it's huge.
So I think that's a really important part for professionals to get, that there's not just the child that they're engaging in the litigation for. There's other children potentially in that family unit as well that need to be cared for and looked after and helped to develop and grow and thrive.
Yeah. It seems bizarre that in our world, a 16-year-old carer on minimum wage can work with our child and have all kinds of training courses. Mum and dad don't. The other family members don't. The family are the ones who are going to be around that person, who are going to be around P longer than anybody else. Get some support. And I think good litigation solicitors recognise that. I know it's an issue, is that recoverable or not, because it's all about P. There's too much emphasis on P. I've discovered this past year with my 2 adult sons, one of the benefits of travelling with them as adult sons is getting drunk and having some really good conversations. And I realised the impact of the legal case has had on my family, and not in a good way, really not in a good way. We're working hard to improve that at the moment. My son's obviously fantastic, so they're happy to work on it, but I see that too often, the dynamics. It's not fair. It's all about P. It should be about the family.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's really important that the families have got the support of organisations like yours from everybody's perspective to make sure that as you go through a legal case and then the challenges that you face post-settlement, we can help and support families to navigate them. Because for 2 reasons, we can help families, get the most out of the litigation process and get to a point where they're going to have potentially the funds available to support their child and the rest of the family as best as possible, because it has an impact on everybody, you're right. But also that you can help to support them with the decisions and the challenges that they're going to have post-settlement and the ongoing impact on that family, because it doesn't stop on that day of settlement. And I think that can be a challenge for families. Families can think, oh, we've done really well now. We've had these years and years of litigation and we've settled and we've got all this money. And it's gonna solve our problems, but it's not. No. You don't get all that money.
And no family ever thinks that.
Yeah.
Never. Every single family at settlement, it's a grief process.
Yeah.
It's a really hard, because although it sounds silly, you've been years travelling, going through a case, you've had admissions, all the rest of it. But when a judge rubber stamps, somebody messed up, not just my child's life, my family's life, and that hits really, really hard. And suddenly your legal team pulls back. We always say to families, just take some time out. It's crucial, because there is no I've achieved this. There's no champagne. There really, really isn't. We see solicitors celebrating, and they'll be posting on the websites, we've achieved 35 million for our client. And I think the family doesn't see any of that. And that's the thing. The family doesn't win anything. No. It's all for P, and it's managed by court protection deputy.
And if it's 35 million, that's because there's some significant challenges there for the family.
Well, yeah, exactly. And that family is dealing with that every day. There's nothing for the family. The family doesn't win anything. It does need changing. It's one of the reasons I started the CIC, because I appreciate the current legislation we have. That's what solicitors are working within. But in my opinion, we could do better. And we need to be recognising the family's losses, not just the child. Well, the child is massively, but if you just isolate one person in a family, that's not healthy.
And what do you think's next for the world that we are engaged in? How would you like to see it develop and progress and move forward?
I'm not sure. The legal process needs overhauling. And I speak to many barristers, speak to many legals, because, and they it's not fair. We all accept it's not fair, and it's kind of, it's how law works, it's case precedent, it's how legislation is, it's all based back on Hillsborough, all kinds of exciting things, but it's not appropriate. And I think a lot of the time it causes more harm than good. So there's lots of scope for things to change, and I think there will be change. I spend a lot of time inviting people to come and speak to my families, because again, business development, if I put yourself in front of my families, they're going to know who you are, and these people are the ones that ultimately can instruct you in some way or another. So professionals are very, very helpful to our charity, because they recognise we're exactly their target audience. And if I put you in front of our families on a question and answer session, but sometimes they get grilled, really, really, there's no holes barred. Our families are very bright. They spent a lot of time, a lot of fighting for their child. They're not stupid by any means at all. So they're always questioning.
Good. And is there anything else that you want to share with us, get across, explain about the work that you do or the families that you support that we've not covered already?
I think that's everything. I would openly ask professionals involved, please offer, and people do. And I would apologise for this last year, as you know the reasons now. I may not have always responded to people, so please contact me because I am now back up and at things again. So come and, we'd love anything you can, any help and support you can offer our families, and question and answer sessions. So we've had health and welfare deputies, we've had, financial advisors, we've had case managers. I think we might have had you at one point. We did. Yes. We did. We quite a poor deputy. We have some deputies over and over again because they're very helpful. Litigation solicitors. So there's lots of different people, but these are your target audience. Yeah. These are the people who pay your fees ultimately by their actions. They've started a legal claim.
And are there any particular types of professionals that you feel would be really valuable to offer their services to come and speak to your families that you've perhaps not had the opportunity to engage with?
There is an issue with health and welfare deputies at the moment. In terms of a lot of families, we're encouraging them to apply for health and welfare deputyship. Court protection don't like it, I don't think. But what happens at 18, and this is the issue, you've got a child who is non-verbal, complex needs. Who's taking over that making those decisions? Because from case manager's point of view, it's transition. It's not necessarily the best interest of that young person. So it's who's going to be you want to use the word in charge, but parents have loved and will always be around for that child, no matter how old they get. Mm-hmm. And that it needs to kind of be a bit more flexible. So health and welfare would be of great interest to us at the moment. We've had a couple of good solicitors come on and give our families advice, but it's a hot question.
Yeah, excellent, good. So, Helen, we have a tradition on the podcast where our previous guest leaves a question for our current guest. So the question, from our previous speaker, who was Emma, who is our in-house midwife here at the Brain Injury Group, is if you think about not just the initial impacts post brain injury of a child or young person, but the longer term impacts on their life. What do you think is the single most important health or education policy that we need to review and change to support our children and their families?
Okay, so I don't know which particular policy, but the process currently isn't in anybody's best interest. When I look back to my son, if I'd have had the right support when he was younger, if the hospital had been honest and investigated more, I didn't know he had an acquired brain injury until he was 14. His hearing loss was diagnosed when he was 5. It's ridiculous length of time. And all those appointments with consultants, 1 year, I think I had 8 audiology appointments in 1 year before they decided that he had a profound hearing loss. Have that support in place. If I'd had that support in place, it was sheer frustration of realising that I wasn't really getting any answers. The answers that I was getting were kind of delayed. And recognising that he needed therapists, he needed extra support, and I hoped that going through a legal case that would provide him with the right. Because as a parent, you're terrified of what's going to happen to your child when they're older. So for me, and I think for most families, it's recognising that we want that support. If that support was available in other areas, we wouldn't have gone through a legal case. Simple as that. So I don't know which policy that would cover. If I'm honest, I really don't. It would be health, whichever one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just the whole system is not geared up to support those people that need it the most in terms of informing you of what's available, accessing the things that are available or should be available, and making things available that are needed instead of things that are not needed. And maybe again coming back to that communication and listening to families about what is going to make a difference for you and your family.
Yeah, the right support can make the world of difference. The right support available consistently and information, and it's there just isn't other families, as we said right, before, other families are your best support because they will tell you what they've been able to achieve, what they've been able to do. Which local authority, direct payments, whatever it is, EHCPs. I learned about EHCPs from other families because schools don't tell you. You can't rely on schools. You can't rely on local authority. It's other families. So more support, yeah.
So I think it quite nicely leads on to the next question for our next speaker, who's Laxmi Patel, who is a special educational needs solicitor from Boys Turner. So you mentioned EHCPs there. Is there anything that you want to leave as a question for Laxmi to answer at the end of her podcast so we can get some information and share it?
I don't know if she could answer. Any parent who's in that world of EHCPs knows how traumatic it is, how much time it takes, that the local authority ignores. Times I'm under Cheshire East. We just, it's a continuous round of they ignore timelines. So you put a complaint in, so they apologise and somebody contacts you. And it's not helping anybody. And I don't know what the answer is. What would her suggestion be? How could it be better?
Absolutely great question. I know your pain on the HCP front. It is a huge challenge, and a huge time stealer, and a huge frustration that it's a constant cycle of not meeting a time scale or a deadline, chasing, making a complaint. So yeah, I think that is massive. And I'm not sure if Laxmi will have the answer, but hopefully she can give us some tips on moving things forward. But yes, great. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us. I think if you would like to get in touch with Helen, or you've got anything that you'd want to speak to us about at the Brain Injury Group, please get in touch at inquiries@braininjurygroup.co.uk, and we can share your details with Helen, especially if you are a professional that falls into that category of health and welfare and some of the challenging discussions and decisions and processes that parents have to navigate as their children get older, and perhaps the smooth transition that gets mentioned is not there for families, and see how we can support there. But thank you so much. It's been really lovely chatting to you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. Thank you.